Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the next session of Automation Hour Goes Bootcamp in 2023. We're so excited to have you here today, so let's jump in. We'll go through our housekeeping slides before we get into today's content. So Pavel, if you want to pop the next slide up. So some logistics, we do have everybody on mute. However, we love the conversation interaction, so please, by all means, post your questions either in the Salesforce Automation Hour Trailblazer community page or here in the GoToMeeting question widget. We'll make sure we get all of those answered for you today. We are also recording, so anything I say will be here for posterity. Hope I don't say anything too dumb, but we will also post that on YouTube when we are finished, so you can definitely catch the replay as well. Again, we are also on the Trailblazer community. We've got a website. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So please feel free to connect with us on your preferred social media channels. And we have a great lineup for this year, so we'll go through that next. We started off the year with some background things that you should know as you're getting prepared to start automating things. And so now we are up to starting in on actually building some flows. So today we are so thrilled to have Pavel here for Record Triggered Flows Part 1. Here's what we've got coming for the rest of the first half of the year, record triggered screen flows, and then we'll get into the rest of the year. After we go through schedule and platform, we'll start talking about subflows, limits, error handling, kind of all of those other pieces that go along once we've covered the basics of building those. So join us for as few or as many sessions as you would like. All right, we cannot bring this to you without the help of our amazing sponsors. So we want to say thank you to them. First up, Concrete.io. They've been our sponsor since the very beginning of Automation Hour. And in more recent years, we've also added another sponsor. So our second sponsor is Sumo Scheduler. Definitely want to say thank you again to them for their support. And of course, we also have our third and by no means least sponsor, ActiveCampaign, who certainly helps us send you all those wonderful reminder emails so that you can attend these great sessions every other week. So again, thank you to all of our amazing sponsors. So co-hosts, you've got me today, Michelle Hansen, along with Rakesh Gupta, but we know you're not here to see us. You're here for the main event, and that is our guest presenter for the day, Pavel. So Pavel, I'm going to hand this over to you and also ask you how to appropriately pronounce your last name.
Nobody knows. It's Dobrzyński.
Dobrzyński. Perfect.
Close.
I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Here are some facts about me. What you need to remember is that I love dogs. I love wearing t-shirts with my company logo. I love Salesforce and I love flows. And I've been in the top 10 of the first edition of FlowFest contest. So I know what I'm going to speak about. However, they are better people than me. So if we speaking about you, I'm just ask you to introduce yourself and to see if you recognize yourself on that page. For whom is the session? It's for basically a broad range of users. It's for people who are experienced developers and who thinks that triggers, Apex triggers are for everything. It's for people who have been with Salesforce for quite a long time, like Jake, who have been using workflow rules and process builder for years, and they are not maybe up to date with everything that is coming new. We have Emily, who is a junior person, new to Salesforce, new to flows, a bit scared to start using flows because she may think that they are too complicated. She also hesitates and is not sure what tool should she use because she's new, she doesn't know everything. And we have on the other end of the spectrum, we have Jane, who is experienced Salesforce architect. She knows everything, but she also has sometimes concerns which tool should be used in a given situation, because you can do the same thing using multiple tools. And finally, we have Bruce, senior consultant, who who basically knows how to configure things, but again, he struggles with getting up to date with what's coming on. So if you could post to the chat who you think you are, who is the closest character to you, that would give us some understanding about the audience, how familiar you are with flows, or maybe you are a process builder user, or maybe you are an Apex developer. So just post the name. Michelle, do we have any names? How the situation looks?
Oh, we're getting a lot. I've got definitely several Jakes. Emily, junior consultant, junior admins coming in. Somewhere between a Jake and an Emily. We've got a couple senior consultants, a Jake and a Bruce. So absolutely, I think we've got a lot of people who can completely identify with this.
So
Absolutely.
we have the whole spectrum. And by the way, I feel myself being closest to Jane. So let's start with the first use case. It's very easy. When the case is created and the field case reason is not defined, we would like to set this field to other. And the question is, which tool should I use? Quite a common question if you are on a project. So what I did, I asked Google. And surprisingly, Google gives me two answers. One is to do with process builder. Another one is to start with workflow rules. And I always try to verify what I get in the search results with some other source. So I asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT was a bit smarter. It provided me with all the options that are possible, but it didn't want to make the final decision, and it said that I should consult with a Salesforce expert. So I asked Salesforce expert, and let's see how we can do it. And I promised you there will be some demos. So basically, when we create a new case and the case reason is blank, we want to set the case reason to other. So let's see our case. As you can see, this is case reason and it's being set to other. And this is the first time that something is not working, because I was preparing for the session, but let's not try to lose our focus and make this make a quick to it. So we probably have some existing automation that is active, and we just need to deactivate this. Let's make a try again. So we create a new case. You see, sometimes you have too many automations and things won't work as expected. So the case reason is blank, yes, so it's working. So how are we going to make this happen, that it's being set to as another? So we go to setup, we go to flows, and we start with creating new flow. And if you click on the new flow button, you will see a bunch of choices. Don't be scared with this. We just start with record triggered flow. When we create this, then we again have a couple of options. First of all, we are being asked on what object are we going to start our trigger. So we want to make this trigger on a case. Then we have some choices when this trigger should fire. We leave it when the case is created. And then we have the possibility to set some entry conditions. So basically that means that we define the criteria when the flow should be triggered. So not only when it is being created, but maybe when some criteria are happening. So we want to set the case reason when it is blank, because if it's set to something else, then we don't want to change this. So we start typing. We see the case reason, and we say that it must be blank. So this is the operator is null, it must be true. And the last thing, we have two options here, and I will be speaking more about these two options in a minute. But for now, let's make this guess that because we want to update a field and we want to make it fast, then we choose these fast field updates. So I have configured my start element, and then I go to the flow layout when I can start adding my logic to the flow. So here is the plus button. If I click on this, I see all the options that I can use in my flow. So I can update the triggering record, and I can add some logic, some assignments, some decisions or loops. I'm selecting the first element. I need to give it a name. So this is a difference to what you had with Process Builder, because with Process Builder, you just create a new entry criteria and then define new actions. You don't need to give a name every time. Now you have to. So I say update case reason. And all I need to do, I want to update the case record that triggered the flow. And I want to set case reason. And it must be other. And basically, that's it. Now I need to save it, maybe provide some name for this flow. Activate and see that it works. So I create a new case. I leave everything blank. And when I create this case, we see that the case reason has been set to other. Yes, so this works. So what have we done here? Before I move forward, I need to make a little of a break and tell about the order of execution in Salesforce. And there is a long list that you can find in the help pages of Salesforce. It's called Salesforce order of execution. And there is a number of elements. So if you start from the left, you have some groups. So at first you load the record, you initialize the values. Then you have something. Yes, these are this before say flows. Then you go to triggers. Then the next category of operations are validation rules and duplicate rules. And then you have something that is called save no commit. So basically this saves the record to the database, but it doesn't commit the changes because there will be a bunch of other operations to happen. And then if we go to the right, we have again after triggers. Then we have a lot of different process automation in declarative way, such as assignment rules, auto response rules, workflow rules, escalation rules, process builder. And then we move to the next group, and this is after save flows. And then after that, we have rollup summary fields, we have recalculating of the sharing rules, and then we have the final save and commit of the record. And then it's the last element is some post-commit logic, such as sending emails, for example. So what we did, we see that we have two times we have flows. We have before save flows and we have after save flows. And they are named in that way because they happen before this position number 7, which is the commit no save, or after that. And this has the impact to how our flows behave. So what we did now, we used the before save flows. So we had the flow that happened before the record is being saved to the database. And a couple of highlights to remember is that they run basically before everything. Yes, so this is on this list, it's the number 3. So after initializations of the record, we have before save flows, and then we have all the other triggers, validation rules, etc. So this is one of the very first operations. There is a record, $record variable that refers to the record that started the flow, and it is really very fast. So it's being said to be 10 to 20 times faster than process builder, and we can use it for the same record updates. In 2020, when Salesforce introduced record triggered flows for the first time, they did some tests, and they analyzed how much time does it take, how much of the overhead is being caused by a different type of automation. And as you can see from the left, you have before save apex that are nearly not seen on that picture because they are so fast. Then you have before save flow. Then you have after save flow workflow rules. Apparently very powerful, very fast, very lightweight. And then we have after save flow, process builder plus flow, and process builder on the right hand side. So what you can see from here is that process builder is something that gives a lot of overhead, and before save flow is something that gives very little overhead. So it's really advised to use before save flows to your record automations. And also in April 2020, Salesforce calculated, globally how many different actions have been executed with workflow rules, process builders, and flows, and it was 150 billion, and 2/3 were same record updates. So you see how much time you can save globally, and how much time you can save in your performance if in your system if you move your automation to before save flows. So this is the takeaway number 1. If you ever have the same record update, use before save flow. Okay, let's move on to another requirement, and this is a little bit more complicated. So when the case is empty and the contact is blank, but account is selected, then we want the account primary contact to be used as the case contact. So let's think about this for a while. We have a new case, we have an account, but on the account there are many contacts because an account can have multiple contacts. So how we can find the right contact that we want to put into our case? Okay, we have this contact marked as the primary contact, but again, we need to somehow find this contact from the whole database of all contacts. So what would we do? Again, this is a same record update, so we probably will use before save flow. And I have already created that flow for you, so I'm not creating the same again from scratch, but let's see what the elements are here. So again, we have our object is case when the record is created. Then we have entry criteria, and we try to make as exact the entry criteria as possible. So I say contact ID is null, is true, because we want to run this flow when there is no contact. And also if there is an account on this contact, because if there is no account, then we don't have a place from where we can take these contacts. So these are our entry criteria. And then we have two elements. So we have the element where we need to find our contact from the whole database of contacts. So if you take a look at this element, we are using another form of database operations. We are using get records. We specify that we want to get contact, and we need to specify the conditions that we want to use to find our contact. So basically, account ID must be equal to our account ID that is being posted on the case record, and the primary contact checkbox must be set to true. And what we do, we only find one record, and we automatically store all fields. This is what Salesforce proposed by default. So here we got our contact, and then what we need to do in the next element, we need to make an assignment. So basically to our record contact ID, we assign the contact ID that was found in this previous element. So this is how it looks. If you start to do it, I start with typing record. So this is my variable that points to my case record that started the flow. When I click on this, I can select fields. So I select ID, and it must be contact ID. And then on the right-hand side, if I start typing, I have the records contacts from get primary contact record. So this is my previous element in the flow. And what I need to do, I just need to get the ID of the record. So basically, this is how it works. And you might be asking why I used assign element and why I don't use update element. And I did it on purpose because you can do it exchangeably, and Salesforce on purpose allows to use this assign element just to stress that there is no save operations. It's just an assignment of a value to the record, and the save operation will be in a moment. So if I save this and activate, and hopefully I didn't break anything, and we create a new case record, but now we specify an account, but we don't specify the contact name. When we save it, we see that we have account name here, and we have the contact name. And the contact name comes from the parent account, and this is Lauren Boyle, and she comes because she was marked as the primary contact. Now we have some time for the mid-session questions. Do we have any, Michelle?
Struggling to find the mute button, Pavel. So we did have a question come in from Bilal. Is the primary contact field a custom field?
Yes, the primary contact is a custom field, correct.
Okay, so it's a custom checkbox field. CETA would like to know if it's checkbox.
Yes, it's checkbox. I just added this field because I wanted to somehow point which contact are we using for the assignment.
Perfect. Those are all the questions we had so far.
Okay, so let's move forward. Now we are coming to some more complex scenario, and we introduce another type of cases called verification requests. So basically, the business requirement is that when you are on the account and account can be verified, this is a common business use case when you do the verification of your clients. It's called either the risk assessment or know your client, and you want to perform some checks that you can do business with this client. If it's reliable, it doesn't support terrorists or comes from countries that are under sanctions. So in this company, the process happens that a salesperson just clicks a button, submit verification case, and then this case for verification request is being created. So first thing first, what we want to do is when we create this case on the account, we want the verification status from the account to be copied to the case. And to answer the questions that may come, both are custom fields. The second action that we want to do is that when we change the status to working on a case, so we are then on a case and we change its status to working, we want the account verification status to be changed to pending. Yes, so we know if I'm on the account, I know that somebody is working on this account. So sorry, in this second point, we are changing the account verification status on a case, and then in the third step, we want to synchronize the status that is on a case with the status that is on the account. And again, we are coming to the question, which tool should I use? And I will do it with 3 different flows. How I do it? So let's go to flows. Let me refresh the screen so we have our flow that is being active. So we have the update of the account verification status, and maybe we just start and show how the process looks like. So I close my cases, which I don't need anymore. So I'm on the account and I have the button create verification case. When I click on the button, it will create me a case with the subject verification case, some status, some data is here. It doesn't send my contact. And the case reason is verification request. So when I created this case, it has the account verification status that currently is empty. The case reason is verification request, so it's not other, it's already set. And as we can see, the verification status on the account is expired. Yes, so we want this expired to come here to say that when I'm on the case that I know that the account verification status is expired. When I change my status to working, I want this account verification status to be changed to pending. And when I change this to pending, that one should change to pending as well. So currently, this is not working because we don't have our process automation, but let's see how we can do it. So first thing first, we want to set the account verification status on a case. And again, we start with a before save flow. Yes, because this is the update on the record that created, that started the process. When a record is created, and again, I define the entry criteria. First, case reason must be verification request. And I also add another criteria that the account ID must not be null, because otherwise I have nowhere from to take the account verification. So these two criteria must be met. And then again, I have just one element, and many of your record triggered flows may have only a few elements. And in this scenario, I'm taking the value from my account record and assign it to the field account verification status on a case. So let's take a closer look about what the options we have here when we have the update. No, it's not here. So when I make the assignment, how do I do it? I'm on a case, but I want to take a value from an account that is related to the case. And if I start typing, so I go to my variable record, and then I see fields that are available on the case record. But I also see fields with an arrows, and those are arrows pointing to related records. So I know I have account field on a case, and if I click on this account, then I move to the account record, and now I see fields from my account, and I can move next and next and next. And when you initialize, when Salesforce initializes this flow, it basically takes up to 9 levels of hierarchy here of this lookup to the record. So you don't need to get the account record, you can just use the lookup. And we wanted to have verification status. So this is how it works. Save it and activate. Okay, so this is how I copied my account verification status to a case. Now what we want to do is that when we change the case status to working, that verification status on a case is changed to pending. So I have another flow for this, and I will come back to this, whether you should use one flow or many flows. But I just created another flow, and this flow triggers when a record is updated, because when the case was created, it's in a status new, and when the record is updated so that the status is being set to working, and obviously the case reason is verification request. I only want this to this type of records, but I run this only when the record is updated to meet the condition requirements. So it will, the flow will trigger only first time when I change my status to working, because next time when I'm editing the record and it's in this working status, this criteria will not happen for the first time. And again, we have just one assignment, pretty easy, record account verification, we change to pending. Okay, so now we have another question. We have our status on a case, and it has been set to pending. And now we want to reflect this change on the account. So what we want to do is we update the record. I want to choose the record that is related to my case, but I cannot because it's not possible in this type of flow. In this flow, in this before save flow, you can only update the record that started the process. So we have to create another flow, and I call it sync account verification status. And unlike the flows that I presented you before, this one is being optimized for actions and related records. So I choose the option to the right. And these are called after save flows. Again, I have my entry criteria. I run it when the record is updated. And I have my entry criteria, and I use the reason must be verification request, and the account verification status has changed. And let's see if it already works. And then we have our elements. We have much more choices here because we can update the triggering record. We obviously have the same logic elements as we had before, but we have more database operations. We can create records, we can update records, we can delete records. And we use update record. And what we are going to use here, we are going to update another record. We are going to update records from account object. And we can do it to false. So we can specify the conditions. So just say that we want to update an account which ID is equal account ID on our case record. But we have also some more straightforward options. Like we can say, I want to update records that are related to the case that triggered the flow. So when I click on this, I have the possibility to find records that are related to our case. I select account. I just need to hit this dot because I want to update the record here. And it's done. So I'm going to update my related record. And what I'm going to do on that account, so now on the left-hand side, I see fields from my account object that this is the record I will be updating. It's the verification status. And what I want to do, I want to pass the value from the record that created the flow. But if you start to try typing record, you see that you also have another variable called record prior, but we use our current version record, and we want to have this account verification status. So we take the value from case and pass it to the account. Save it. Activate. And now let's make a test to see if everything works. So I go to my account record. The verification status is expired, just to make some final check. I create a new verification case. I leave contact empty, save it. And when I go to my case, I see that the account verification status is now expired. I also see that the contact has been assigned because I have another flow to do it. So now I'm starting my process. So I'm changing the status to working, and I should see that account verification status here to be changed to pending. And when this changes to pending, I should see that one change to pending as well. So when I change the status, I see that everything works. Yes, so we have account verification status, it's pending, and on the account, that verification status is also pending. So what have we done? We have used after save flows. So this is the other group of record trigger flows. These are the flows that happen after the first draft save operation to the database. And basically those flows, you can remember that they run after nearly everything. So after all triggers, after all validations, duplications, assignment rules, escalation rules, there is one thing that happens after, and these are entitlement rules. So that's why I put this to the right. And we have rollup summary fields are being recalculated after save flows. So it's also good to remember, because you will not see if you make changes, you will not see this reflected in this after save flow. And you have two variables. So you can refer to values that are currently in this flow, so after the save operation, or to values that were before the save operation. So this is the record prior. So these are the old variable, old values of that record that were assigned before the update operation started. And also what's important to remember is that neither of those flows, nor the before save nor after save, cause recurrence. So when you save it, it will not trigger you any other operations on the same record. And the intention is to replace process builder, and this is actually happening because you probably know that workflow rules and process builder are being set to retire soon. Takeaway number 2, wherever you want to have operations on related records, whatever you want to do, any action that you cannot do in before save flow, use after save flow. And I would say the golden rule is, if you can do something in before save flow, use it. If you can't, use after save flows. Okay, so we coming to the question, how do I compare record triggered flows with workflow rules and process builder? So if you start with workflow rules, they are very simple. It's a single if-then statement. So every time a record is created or updated, you check the condition, and then you can run one or more actions. If you want to have more conditions, you need to create a workflow rule for each of the conditions. Then we have process builder. Again, you can make a choice that every time a record is created or updated, and then you are checking the conditions, but you can have multiple conditions inside one flow, inside one process builder flow. And then if the condition number 1 is happening, you can have one or more actions. Then you can either move to the next criteria, or you can just exit the flow. And then you check the condition number 2, condition number 3, etc., and so on and so on. And at the end, you have record triggered flows. And with record triggered flow, you can use flexible logic. So you can define your logic. So this is what makes a biggest difference between record triggered flows and process builder and workflow rules. You are not limited to just simple if then statement. You can do loops, you can do check the conditions, you can find records, you can update records, you can delete records. Basically, you can do nearly everything. And you have entry criteria, something similar to workflow rules, that define you when the flow should be executed. So if these entry criteria are not met, the flow is not being executed. Some summary, what you can do with process builder, what you can do with flows. The first, when these start. Yes, so before save flows start before record is created, updated, or deleted, and only before save flows do this. After the record is created, we have after save flow, and we have workflow rules and process builder. After a record is updated, we have again all those three. When the record is deleted, after the record is deleted, we don't have declarative process automation available. So we can only have before save flow before the record is deleted. And you can use entry criteria in flows, in workflow rules, but not with process builder. So if you have multiple process builders, they all have been executed. So this makes the difference between process builder and flows. And some summary of actions that you can use in each of these tools. So as you can see, in after save flow, you can basically do everything, but not everything. For example, you cannot display an alert message that is possible in Apex trigger. After save flow doesn't know how to do it. But other than that, you can do whatever you want. So now I'm coming to the question whether we should use one flow or many, and this question is floating around. I'm not going to give you a definite answer to this. I think that might be covered in the next part of record triggered flows. Just want to give you some heads up, what's my take on this. So if you think about record triggered flows and workflow rules on the left-hand side and process builder on the right-hand side, with workflow rules, you had no choice. If you wanted to have multiple updates, you had to use multiple workflow rules. With process builder, you could create one or you could create many, but it was a best practice to use one process builder per object, because a process builder could cause recurrence. So one process builder could call another process builder on the same record. And B, process builder is very heavy. So if you had multiple process builder on one object, all those process builders have been loaded to memory and executed, and that was a big overhead. And record triggered flow is something in between. So you can define your logic inside the flow, but you can also set the entry criteria to tell when the flow should be executed. So even though you have like 10 flows per object, it may happen that only 2 or 3 of them will execute at a given time, because you have this entry criteria that make the decision. So it's also part of your logic that you can put in your entry criteria to make the decision which flow should be executed when. And if you use this approach, you can keep the logic inside the flow very tiny. Obviously, it's a question you always need to balance, because you probably don't want to have 100 single element flows. So if you have more complex automations, you need to group those actions into single flows, but you should not try to make everything in one flow. Coming to our example, we have 5 flows created during this very short session, and if you look at them, they fire in different situations. So the first one is triggered when the case reason is blank, and the flow number 3, the 3.1, update account verification status. Basically, these are exclusive, because the first one starts when the case reason is blank, the second one when the case reason is verification request. So you will never have these two flows firing together. It's always either or. Then we have the set contact on account, and this flows fires when the contact is blank. And it may be a combination with the criteria number 1 or the criteria number 3. So whatever the case reason is being set, this criteria that the contact on the account is blank is completely independent on the other one. And you may want to use, it may happen that either one or two flows will be triggered depending on which criteria are being met. And this is absolutely fine. And then we have our last flow, set verification status to pending. We are on the left-hand side when the status changes to working. And this is an interesting concept here, because we have two flows that basically are using the same field. Both are triggered on the update operations. So again, the flow, these flows won't trigger at the same time, because the first three trigger when the record is created. The last one triggers when the record is updated. And then we have something that happens before save, and we change the status of the verification. We change the value of the verification status field to pending. And then we have this save no commit operation that basically puts this new value of the verification status to the database. And then we have our flow 3.3 sync account verification status on the right hand side that fires after that save operation. And what this flow sees is it sees that the field account verification status has been changed. So the change that we made in the first flow triggers the after save flow. And this is also something interesting to know. I'm not saying this is the absolutely correct way to do it, but it shows you a concept, yes, that this is possible, and you can use it to your benefit. You can also have the flows if they are all after save flows. If you change a value in one flow, and then you have another flow that happens after, and it depends on that value, it will also trigger, but it will not trigger on the is change. So if you want to have the is change, you need to have to set the field before save, and then the after save flow can recognize that the field has been changed. And that's the takeaway number 3. Don't put everything into single flow and use multiple flows. And this is a recommendation from Salesforce as well. So coming to our question, which automation tool should I use? Salesforce gives us some recommendation. So if you go to the architect pages, and I will post the link at the end of my presentation, you see a comparison what's possible with low-code solutions, which is before save trigger and after save trigger. What is possible with code solution, which is Apex trigger. You have also something in between that we didn't cover in today's presentation, but it will be covered in one of the upcoming sessions. You can mix Apex triggers with your after save flows, and it gives you some more flexibility. So you can see from that picture for which use cases you can use which tool. And the last takeaway from today is that if you have some complex processing, don't try to do it with flows. It will be possible often, but it not necessarily is the best, is the optimal solution. So if you have some very complex processing, use Apex. And these are some references where you can get some more information. I would like to point to the Salesforce Architect pages. There are really a lot of very cool stuff. There is a section for the record triggered automation. You can take a read and see what the recommendations are. That section is being updated. It's being live document. You have a guide how you can convert process builder processes to flow. I think now it's coming also out of the box in Salesforce. You don't need to use the unofficial.com, but it comes from unofficial.com. And I also encourage you to watch our Salesforce Automation Hour channel on YouTube. There is a lot of interesting stuff. Questions?
Oh, do we have questions? It's been great going on in chat. Okay, so Nathan first has a question. I'm curious, can you briefly explain your flow naming structure?
Yes.
So I think the 1, 2, 3 and the 3.1 and the 3.2.
So the way I'm trying to call my flows is that I start with the object name. Let me make it a bigger if possible. So I start naming with the object name. Then I say whether this is before or after, and then the operation. So is it create or is it update? Create or update or delete. These two signs on the left, it's a legacy, let's say, naming convention. Before it was possible to customize the list views for flows, and I use that basically to have before save sorted before after save. So then I have dash, and then I just try to explain what the flow does. So here I use the numbering just to refer to my use cases. MRTF means meet record triggered flows. I have many flows in this orgs, so I just give you a look. And I use this for different kind of sessions. So I have a lot of flows, and I just need to navigate through them. The good thing is that the naming convention is not as important as it used to be, because if you have, let's go to this, you have the possibility to select other fields. So for example, like in here, I have all that information on the list view. Yeah, so I have what the triggering object, whether this is before save or after save. But I still use this naming convention, and we use this naming convention in our company, because when you have a lot of flows, it's somehow easier to navigate.
All right, so next question comes from Heather. When do formula fields get hit in the process of flows? Do you need to use after save if you're working with a formula field that would impact something that you're doing in your flow?
Let me rephrase this. So you have a formula field that is being affected by the update of operation. So you change something that changes the outcome of the formula field, and then you want to use this formula field in your flow. So my understanding of this is that this recalculation of the formula field will not be seen in before save flow, because it happens in this save operation, but it will be reflected in after save flow. But you cannot use is changed on formula field. So you can use, if you remember, I think it was that case. In this flow, we have a condition. We don't use is change here, but we have a condition only when a record is updated to meet the condition requirement. I believe if you have formula field here and it's equals, it should trigger. Definitely, if you have that and you have formula field here, it will trigger your flow.
Okay, so I think the biggest thing about formulas is that Salesforce says they're not evaluated until the point at which they're needed, kind of at runtime. So, well, I think you're right. We're both pretty sure that if you use it as a criterion of a force safe flow, it should work. As always, build this and test it in a sandbox with your use case and see what happens, and then you'll know for sure what you should do with that.
Yes, I agree. You should make a track, and formula fields are tricky.
Perfect. Okay. So Nathan had an observation. I appreciate your planning, analysis, and documentation. It's obvious you've worked with flow a lot in real life and had to explain it for others. So very helpful there. So Jean asked a question. We might need a little bit more context around this. Is it possible to add a VLOOKUP value on a record based on a specific record type on a before save flow?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Right. I think we might need a little bit more about the use case or what we're looking at, because VLOOKUPs aren't really a thing in flow. So I'm not totally sure what we're trying to accomplish here. Perhaps Jean can give us some more information. We can circle back on that one. Okay, so we have a question from Barb. I thought we were supposed to have only one flow for each object.
No, it is not. So if even there is some discussion. There was some discussions about what the framework to use, and if you go to some Salesforce pages, so Trailblazer community pages, I believe, Michelle, you will be better in finding that page. It speaks about using frameworks for flows, and there are some articles that propose to use one flow per object. Obviously, this is not possible because you have before save, you have after save, you have on create, on update, on create or update. So at least you have multiple options here. And my take, if I'm in doubt, I say myself, we have this flow trigger explorer. I'm not sure if you know it. So we have on the account, and you can see flows that happen on the account when the record is created or when it is updated. You can reorder this. You can set the order in which they are executed. So I think this is for reason. Yes, if Salesforce wanted us to use just one flow per object, then why we would have this all? And another argument for using multiple flows per object is that they don't run all or none. Yes, it's like a process builder. With process builder, you have all process builders to trigger. With flows, you can select which flow will trigger by using this enter criteria, and you can use enter criteria that are exclusive. So even though you have 5 flows per object. At a given time, only one will meet the criteria and will trigger. And last but not least, if you start to try to put things in one big flow, then it becomes complicated and sometimes it's harder to maintain. I'm not going to give to say the holy truth, but definitely having multiple flow per object isn't bad.
Awesome. So I know we're past the top of the hour. Pavel, do you have a little bit more time for questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we got quite a few more coming in. So Sita would like to know, why couldn't you use the prior $ record for the account status changed to pending when the case is working?
Sorry, say it again.
So Sita wants to know, why can't we use the prior $ record for the account status to pending when the case is working?
We can, but in this after save flow.
Right, and I think probably what it is because the case status is changing. So the prior record that we have the access to is the prior value of the case record, and we don't have access to the prior value of the account record.
Yes, correct. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so then Param would like to know, can we reopen a case after the customer sends another email after we've closed the case? So you close a case, customer sends in another email, can it reopen the case?
Yeah, I had this requirement recently on my project, and it doesn't open automatically, but you can create a record triggered flow on object called email message, and then on that email message you can recognize whether this is incoming message or not. And you can also recognize whether it's related to a case. And then you can check the status of the case and change the case. You do it in after save flow. So it's possible, but you don't do it on a case, you do it on the email message. And sometimes, thanks for this question. Sometimes you want to have some flows you need to make on other objects. So say you are working on opportunity, or you are assigning a contact to an account, and you have multiple contacts to accounts and multiple accounts to contacts. So this creates you this uses another object called account contact relationship. So if you want to have a trigger on it, you need to do the trigger on the account contact relationship, not on the contact object or account object.
Got it. Okay. So Tanya had asked, when should you use a flow versus a formula field to set the value of one field to match a different field?
When do I use? Yes, it's a good question. So not sure if you are referring to this one. If you are on the case, you could have this account verification status to be a formula field to reflect what's on the account status. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to have an option to be able to edit this field. Yes, so if this was formula field, it wouldn't be possible. So now I have an option. I'm working on a case, and I say, okay, so this account is verified. I save it, and I have this reflected on the account. Yes, so I just working on on this, and I needed to have a field that I'm able to edit on a case. But I wanted this field to be initiated from the account, and just to be very honest, I could do it in my action. So if I have this quick action here, I can initialize case fields based on the account field. So like I did, for example, with this case reason, I could have this account verification status. But I wanted to illustrate that you can use flow and you can refer to your parent record in this flow.
So, and I think what I've usually figured out is if you want two fields to stay in sync, that's where a formula field comes in pretty handy. But if you want to stamp a field with the status or value that it had at a specific point in time and then not change it, that's where flow wins out over a formula field. Or if you're trying to put information on a record that's from a specific child record, then you have to do it with flow, because formulas can only let you pull information down to a child from a parent. You can't pull up from a child to a parent with a formula. That requires a roll-up field, which you only have if it's master detail and all sorts of other things. And yes, Heather chimes in, you can also run out of reference fields on a custom object. So if you've got too many formula fields, then you'll have to go with stamping that field with flow if you run out of formula fields.
Yes, I think the limit is 9 or 11.
I haven't hit that one yet, fortunately. I'm hoping I don't.
I did once, yeah. So I know it happens. I also hit the what is the compilation size of the formula field?
They just tripled it to like 15,000 characters. It's really big now.
Good to know. I try to split this big formula to multiple to several components, several fields, and refers the formula fields in the upper level formula, but it didn't work because it calculates the total from all formulas fields that are being referenced in formula.
Gotcha. Okay, so Jean did come back with some clarification about the VLOOKUP question. So if there a new contact gets created with a specific record type and there's a household lookup field on the contact page, can you pass the selected household value on the contact record into the new record? And I think the answer to that is yes. As long as there's that relationship or you can look up the record that you want to pull the value from, then yes, you can populate that with a flow onto the new record. Okay, so next question. Mahesh would like to know, what is the best practice for debugging flow issues?
Long question. So you can debug your flows. In the flow, you have this option for debugging. So when you debug the flow, you can either, probably you need to skip the start condition requirement, or not necessary. You can either skip or so you always go through this path. Then you need to select the record on which you want to debug your flow. And then you just run it. I think it will run. We see what happens, and then you see on the right side. Why don't I see it here? You see some information about that flow and what happened. You can read it. I don't know. It's not here. But sometimes with this, you not always can check the entry criteria, especially if you say that something should be happening for the first time, or there is changed. So this debugging uses the static values of that record. What I sometimes do, and nothing happens, and I use the debug, and I don't know why the flow doesn't make any results. If I'm in the before save flow, I just try to update a description field or another field just to know that I entered to the flow. If I'm in the after save flow, I use post to chatter. So that tells me whether I entered that, I passed the entry criteria and I'm in the flow or not. And it happens that you are debugging the flow and you think everything is good, but the point is that you never hit that flow, because especially if you have multiple conditions in your entry criteria and you have custom logic, it may happen that you made a mistake there. Yeah, so this helps. So there's three things that you do. You use this debug. It's really helpful when you design your flow, and it's a bit more complex than this one. But then if you do the debug and it doesn't work, then just try to make some checkpoints to know that the entry criteria have been met and that your flow has started.
Okay, so last question that we have in is, do you document your flows? And if yes, can you share your best practices around that?
I try to document my flows by describing in, so that definitely I don't, what I don't do, I don't take the whole flow and just recreate this in blocks to show the algorithm. But what I try to do when I document my flow in the technical design document, I briefly explain what the flow does, what the entry criteria are, and what is the logic. And if you are in the flow, you first, I try to make meaningful names. So say in this element what it does. And also in the recent version, you have the possibility to add some description. So you can give some small description of what's happening here. Like, not sure if this is the wisest, but then you see this little icon here. If you hover on this, you see the description. So definitely what I encourage you to do, use the description in the flow properties. So what we do, we also put the reference to the Jira ticket that's where is the user story about this flow. So then somebody can go and see what the requirement was, and then give a description what this flow does basically. And then when you have the elements, use meaningful names of these elements and use the description field. I think we should use the description field. And in the written document, I just give a brief summary of what the flow does and when it triggers.
Yep. And I think the other thing that I've heard lately is to have a single document that outlines all of the automation in your org, when it happens, in what order it fires, and an overview of what it does in terms of the business process. It's kind of like an automation headquarters, so that you have one place that you can look and see how everything interacts. And when you're thinking about making changes, you can sort of figure out what this is going to impact, essentially. So I think on top of everything else you said, that's probably the best things, but you're right. I think there's a lot of people that have pushed back against, if you've already built it in Salesforce, you don't need to go make an absolute copy of it outside of Salesforce that's literally the same boxes and lines. I mean, otherwise we could just go into Salesforce and look at it, right?
Yeah. But absolutely 100% agree to have this, having this, you know, in one document, in one place. You have all the automations on object, and if you group it by object, you need to also be aware that when you start the automation on one object and you relate and you update related record, that related record goes through the safe procedure, so it triggers its own flow triggers. So there might be dependencies between the objects as well. So if you do it, and if your process automation relies on those dependencies that happen in this cross-object updates, then it should be definitely, you know, put in bold that you do it. Yes.
Yep, makes sense. Awesome. Pavel, we finally got through all of these questions in Automation Hour and 20 Minutes today. So we very much appreciate you coming to present. Thank you so much for this. So many good thank yous and just kudos coming in. So very much appreciate your time today. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for part 2 of Record Triggered Flows.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.